Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session, Big SEO for Big Data, leveraging SEO to find clients seeking big data solutions. My name is Dallas Jessup, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. So I'm really excited to be joined here today by SEO Digital. So today joining us, we have Scott Mason, who is an SEO expert and specialist copywriter, content marketer, and all-around digital marketing geek with tons of experience both in-house and agency side. He's worked on websites ranging from e-commerce giants with millions of pages to developing brands. He has a really keen interest in programming and coding, and Scott's particularly invested in technical SEO. And we're also joined today by Adam Vowles, who is a digital marketer and lover of all things SEO. As head of SEO at SEO Digital and a mentor at Nottingham University, Adam's extremely experienced as a data analyst and is actively involved in innovative new ways of testing ranking algorithms and is always staying at the cutting edge of SEO. So I'm really excited for them to join us today. There's a lot of great information here on the Bright Talk Academy. As always, we're trying to bring you some of the best insights into revolutionizing your marketing programs. So we want to make sure that this is extremely conversational, so you'll have the Ask Questions tab at the bottom of your screen. So please ask a question at any time. We'll make sure to answer them throughout the session and at the end. We've also added a few attachments, including today's deck, as well as the sites to connect with SEO Digital, as well as Bright Talk. And then the last thing is that this webinar will be available on demand after we wrap up and will be accessible through the URL you're currently on. So feel free to share that link directly or use the social icons at the top right of your screen. So without further ado, I'm excited to let you guys get into the content today. Let's take it over to you guys.
Hi everyone, great to be here today. So before we start, let's just go over a brief overview of the components of SEO. SEO as an industry and the strategies that have used have evolved drastically since its inception. SEO has now become part of the larger marketing mix and holds a wealth of opportunities for anyone who can do it right. People trust the organic search results. Attaining high positions in the organic search results not only means a higher level of organic traffic, but also the authority and trust that it gives in the eye of the customer. So we'll go into more detail on these in the upcoming slides, but at a very basic level, SEO comprises of two main factors, the on-site SEO and the off-site SEO. These two factors work in a symbiotic relationship. There are exceptions, but a general rule of thumb is that if either of these two factors is lacking, you'll find it very difficult to gain high organic rankings. So on-site SEO revolves around how your website functions. It's vitally important to get your on-site functioning correctly as you have full control over it. On-site SEO is a huge, complex, in-depth subject that requires its own presentation. While Google has evolved to encompass many other factors, it's still a text-based information engine. Therefore, the level of text-based content that you place on your website is critical for Google to understand who you are and what your purpose is. Google wants to see that a website is active. They want to promote a website that is updated frequently, that provides a great user experience. We don't really have time to go into all the aspects of on-site, but a few key takeaways for any big data company is that you should aim to have at least 500 words of content on each page. Google hates pages that are thin on content. 1,000 words on the most important pages. A mobile optimized website. Each page needs to have a unique content on it. Google hates duplicate content. Your website needs to be fast, loading in under 1 second. You need to have a clear structure in place that makes sense to both users and search engines. The original search engines concentrated purely on on-page factors. So for instance, they were looking at how many times a keyword was mentioned on a page. This method of assessing the value of a website was flawed from the start. The results were that webmasters included keywords excessively and the user experience was very poor. Google changed all of this, and instead of incorporating incorporated off-page factors into their core algorithm, specifically links. So one website linking to another website using a HTML hypertext link. Google looked at links as votes. The more links a website had pointing at it, the more valuable it was in the eyes of Google. If you think of the web as a map, with the links as roads, the more roads going to a city or website, the bigger or more important the city or website is. Now, a lot has changed since those early days, but these basic premises still remain. Links are still the fundamental core of Google's ranking algorithm. To combat the rise of low-quality link building using automated tools, creating blog comments and automated articles, Google shifted its focus and now concentrates on the quality of a link. What Google is looking for is links from high-authority news sites and blogs. They are looking for links that have been given naturally and that cannot be gamed or manipulated. They are looking to promote content that deserves to be promoted. A comment on a blog that was set up last week does not have the same amount of power as a link from the Huffington Post. So how is this relevant to big data companies? One of the best ways to get people talking about your brand online and get people linking to you is through content creation. Big news sites and industry blogs will not link to your site for no reason. You must give them a reason to link to you. This is done through content creation. As a big data company, you have a wealth of data on your hands that can be leveraged to create amazing content pieces that not only appeal to your target audience, but also journalists and bloggers. By using this data and displaying it in a way that appeals to people, you can establish yourself as an authority within your industry. This level of content marketing also gives the search engines the fresh web pages and text content that they crave and allows them to understand more about who you are and what you do.
So why is SEO such a great opportunity for big data solutions providers? Well, the great thing about SEO is that it makes you visible to those searching for your exact services. The searcher's intent already matches exactly what you're trying to advertise, which makes it one of the most targeted and high converting strands of marketing that there is. PPC cost per click is a good indicator of what each visitor to your site from certain keywords are worth. And as we can see from these examples, traffic for big data solutions providers has a relatively high value. As well as this, big data is becoming increasingly talked about in digital marketing and business. As we can see in these graphs, the number of searches for big data companies have grown considerably in the last 2 years alone. And as the buzz around big data grows, the number of big data solutions providers is only going to grow with them, making the space more crowded and more competitive. The problem being that contemporary SEO is all about patience and long-term strategies. It's no longer the case that companies can just chuck money at their SEO and expect to rank in a month. Even in relatively uncompetitive spaces, it can still take months of hard work to rank a site on the first page. And in more competitive niches, such as this, it can take much longer. However, as a result of this, high rankings tend to be much more stable, meaning that when you achieve a higher ranking, you stay there. Since the big data bubble shows no signs of stopping, now is the best time to start investing in SEO to achieve long-term high rankings that can be one of your main sources of leads and customers before the space becomes more competitive. However, modern SEO is about more than just ranking. The good old days of chucking spam links at your website until you rank are now long gone. Now, the most effective way of ranking sites is by creating holistic content marketing campaigns. Not only does a relevant and targeted content marketing campaign build your reputation amongst those you're actively targeting, but it puts your services in front of potential customers. And the very act of doing this can be the backbone of a link building campaign that will ultimately rank your site higher on search engines. Therefore, by increasing your visibility through content marketing, you'll also be increasing your visibility on search engines. As well as this, SEO is already well aligned with what you do. One of the most powerful SEO assets is the ability to create valuable, link-worthy content. The best link assets tend to be highly data-driven, with new findings and innovative research. For an ordinary company, performing this kind of analysis is highly costly, Gathering data and analyzing it is difficult, which is why your services exist. However, big data companies can do this easily and cheaply. This means that you already have a hugely valuable SEO asset ready and waiting in-house. How to use big data for SEO. Press and PR companies need data and studies. This kind of information is the hook that creates a lot of news. And as you can see from these examples from some established brands, data-driven press releases are a tried and tested way to get exposure from, and from an SEO perspective, powerful links from websites as well. So this example, we have scmagazine.com, which uses and links to a study by the Netwix Corporation. The TS50 you can see on the top right stands for trust flow. Trust flow is a metric created by a third-party software called Majestic SEO. Majestic crawls the web in a similar way to how Google does, and it looks at how websites are interlinked to give us an idea of how powerful any specific website is from Google's perspective. So a trust flow of 50 is a good, powerful link. You can see here that Visa have used a very similar tactic using big data to create studies to gain a link from Tech Week Europe, which has an even more powerful trust flow of 62. Expedia, who find cheap flights and travel options, have gained a link from the travel section of UK newspaper The Evening Standard, which has a trust flow of 65. This is a great example of how this kind of database content can not only put your brand in front of relevant people reading about your niche, but can also get highly relevant and powerful backlinks as well. By outreaching to powerful and influential writers in the niche that you're targeting, you can give them corroborating studies and data when news stories emerge. This helps establish yourself as a resource for this kind of analysis. This will not only earn you citation links, but it will earn you a great deal of exposure, therefore increasing your search visibility as well as your profile in the niche that you're targeting.
A good example of using big data as a content marketing tool is a company called Jawbone. Jawbone provide wearable tech in the fitness market. As a result of this, they're able to collect huge amounts of data on people's fitness and lifestyle habits. As their products are used all over the world, they're able to collect huge amounts of data on when people in different parts of the world wake up and when they go to sleep. After collecting their data, the results looked a little bit like this. The information is quite interesting, but on the other hand, it's not very engaging. The truth is, people don't like big data in its raw form. They like it when it's presented in a clear, understandable format that shows some insight. So Jawbone took that data, collected it, and created this. They used their raw data and turned it into an interactive piece of content. This displays the same information as the previous data, but allows users to engage with it. It's easy to understand, and it can be quickly digested. So from an SEO point of view, how successful was this one piece of content? It received links from 254 websites, which included links from high authority sites such as the Washington Post, Mashable, and the Huffington Post. It's not bad for a simple graph. So, you have your raw data. How do you make it manageable and interactive? Well, there are a number of tools out there that are available to make this process relatively painless and straightforward. All of these tools are positives and negatives, and it will depend on your data set and what you want to achieve, which will ultimately decide on which one you choose. Tabloo. There are free and paid versions available. It allows users to open a spreadsheet, select fields from the data, and drop them into a layout editor. Tabloo offers a variety of options for presenting data, from a traditional bar chart to tree graphs. Users of the paid version can export their presentations directly to common graphical formats, and users of the public version can save to the Tabloo servers. Many website operators are already familiar with Google Docs. Google Charts is the next logical progression, and it can quickly take spreadsheets that are saved in Google Docs and turn them into fully formatted charts. As an added bonus, Google provides snippets for every chart that's produced, allowing you to readily insert the presentations into pages without the messy process of creating graphics and uploading them to your server. If you know how to embed YouTube videos, you already have the skills available to do a Google Charts presentation. Built around a simple web-based interface, this program is designed to let you quickly upload a spreadsheet and convert it into a chart. It then presents a number of different finished layouts, and you can simply choose your preferred one. From there, a chart could be saved as an image or embedded onto a website using a code snippet.
So, how do we go about actually preparing this outreach and gaining these sort of links? The first and most important part of starting any data-driven link building campaign is identifying newsworthy topics that are relevant to you. You need to make your focus narrow enough that it's easy to stay up to date with developments, but broad or fast-moving enough to ensure that there's frequent coverage. It's imperative that you stay ahead of trending news, and the only way to do this is to follow those who create and inform the news. Find and follow all the influencers in your chosen focus niche. Follow them religiously on Twitter and find relevant subreddits and online communities dedicated to your niche. It's also a good idea to set up lots of Google alerts to cover any queries relevant to your niche. By doing this, it means that as stories begin to emerge, you'll be able to quickly jump on it and find a newsworthy angle. The content itself, however, is only as good as the outreach. You can have the greatest idea, but if it doesn't get in front of the right people, it will never perform as well as it could. Link building and PR success is 20% content and 80% outreach. And building relationships with the right people is the most crucial aspect of outreach. In the previous section, we covered how you should be remaining completely on top of all the important developments in your niche. Well, while you'll do this, you need to pay attention to who is writing about the niche and covering all the important topics in it. Once you've identified the people who would be most interested in the data you'll be handling, you need to start building up full profiles for each of them. Finding emails and contact information can also be difficult and involve creepy levels of internet stalking. There are a number of good email stalking tools to help you, such as Email Hunter, Journalisted, and Verify Email. Emailhunter.co is one of the best. If there's a specific blog or a site focused on your niche, you can simply stick it in the domain and it will spit out any associated emails that are related to it. However, if you're going after a particular journalist from a newspaper, things can get a bit trickier, and this is when your web stalking skills will come to the fore. You need to Google them, find any blogs they've written, their Twitter, or their social media presence, and find out any other online publications they've written for. In many cases of this level of research, you'll tend to find an email. But if that fails, all you need to do is find out what structure their publication uses for email addresses. Email Hunter will likely have at least one or two of their colleagues in the database. So using it, you'll be able to take a good guess at what theirs will be. The aforementioned journalisted.com is also a great resource, which contains loads of journalist contact information, and it also groups articles into themes and topics. Then this helps you quickly identify journalists who are writing about things that are relevant to you. For example, let's say we want to contact Lynn Gardner, who is a journalist who writes about theatre for The Guardian. Now, Lynn already has our email addresses available on the internet, so it's not like we're doxing her or anything like that. So, using Email Hunter, we can see that the Guardian's email structure is firstname.lastname.com. So, now that we have that information, we can know that Lynn's should therefore be lynn.gardner@theguardian.com. And we can check this using verifyemail.org, which essentially just checks for response codes and emails. So we can type it into verifyemail.org, and we can see there that it's a correct email address, and that will get through. However, having someone's contact information and their email address isn't enough. You need to build up full profiles for each of your prospects. Use a customer relationship manager if you have it, or just a spreadsheet if you don't, and fill it with lots of pertinent information. You need to keep track of notable pieces they've written that you can reference, as well as any conversations or points of contact you might have with them, and any tidbits you can use to build rapport. You'll see lots of templates from PR gurus with relationships to the pitch and how to write it. The reality is, though, there's no real hard and fast rules for pitching. What one journalist will like, another's going to hate. So as a general set of rules, just keep the emails as short and snappy as possible. Journalists are busy, but equally, they're lazy. So if you hand them something pretty much ready to go, they're going to be much more responsive. Remember, the pitch is there to serve the journalist, to show them what you can do for them, who you are, and why you matter. So they don't need a massive biography about you. A half a sentence is going to be more than enough to convince them that you know what you're talking about. Sending a high volume of personalized emails is going to be time-consuming and tiring, but mail merges make it easy to send highly personalized emails to hundreds of recipients at once. It's important that the emails you send are as personalized as possible, which is where all the details you used to build the prospect profiles come into play. With mail merges, you can include an almost unlimited number of different variable fields, and this can be used to do anything from change a single word to inserting a whole sentence. So it's important that you get to grips with how mail merges work and kind of experiment to find out how best to use the variable fields to make emails as personalized as possible. Personalized emails are going to give you a much better shot of getting through than generic ones. If you ask any journalist, they're going to tell you they get hundreds and hundreds of emails a day that are generic and not targeted to them. If you target to them and make it highly personalized, you're going to stand out above the crowd. But it's important that before you start blasting out mail merges, that you test them thoroughly. I can tell you from my own personal experience that sending a cock-up to hundreds of influential journalists is not a nice feeling. So test and test again before you start sending any big merges. It's also very, very important to keep track of who's replied and what they've said, and keep your master contact list or CRM updated with all the most up-to-date information. You need to do this religiously, as it spirals out of control very quickly when you're talking to hundreds of different people at once. Microsoft Office has a great mail merge function, as does the free Google add-on Yet Another Mail Merge.
So to conclude, as a big data company, you have a great opportunity. The data that you have at your disposal can be leveraged to create appealing, interesting, and engaging content that talks directly to your target market, and also press and industry influencers. Not only will clever content creation help gain online exposure and links, it will also help to solidify yourself as an established industry leader and authority. Creating the content is only the start of the journey. You must tell the world about what you've done. Targeted outreach is one of the most effective ways of doing this. Record every success and every failure so you can learn from both. Getting visitors to your website is just the first hurdle you face. Once they're there, you must convert them into customers. Think carefully about your conversion rate optimization. How are you going to turn these visitors into customers? One of the most effective ways of doing this is capturing email addresses. Why not offer your research piece as a downloadable PDF in exchange for an email address? That way you can convert SEO traffic into an email subscriber and continuing your marketing efforts through email. Right, that's all we have time for now. Thank you for listening. We've got some questions to go through, so.
Certainly, and thank you guys. I always think it's so interesting to hear about SEO. I think SEO is one of the most interesting topics because the algorithms, Google keeps us guessing with constantly changing their algorithms. So it's definitely a topic that is, while there's best practices, they keep changing. And so it's definitely a topic of interest, not only to myself, but to other people, other marketers. So we have some questions coming in. I highly encourage anyone to continue submitting those. And so let's start with towards the top. So earlier in the presentation, we had a question around gated content. So I know we talked about blogs, but what can people do when they want to capture the data of the prospect without losing the Google search results? Because oftentimes if there's a lot of great content behind a lead form, Google's not picking it up because it flags it as an advertisement. So what can they do for other things on their site to fix that?
So just to make sure we we understand the question. So this is about how to prevent Google from picking up these kind of landing pages and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think that's what the person's trying to get at is what can I do to optimize my landing page so that I don't have to, so I can still capture, prime lead data without losing search engine results.
So, I mean, one option you could do is offer the first kind of parts of the content. You could offer like the first few chapters of a book, and then you have to sign up to read the rest of the book. So that kind of thing. So you kind of get the kind of optimized aspect of it, but you're still able to capture the leads through the page as well, because they have to sign up to actually read the rest of the content.
Great. So moving on to our next question. So, big data is a really hot topic, and our viewer wants to know, how do I balance trying to rank for certain keywords that may be very popular versus really obscure keywords where I can rank higher? How do I balance the hot topics versus too much noise?
Well, with big data, it is kind of difficult. One of the best things to do is to run initial PPC campaigns to work out which keywords convert the best. If you're new to an industry, if you look at your competitors and where they're spending money on PPC and paid advertising, that's usually a good indication of which keywords convert the best. So if you can combine like a paid advertising campaign along with an organic campaign, you can usually work out which keywords are going to be conversion focused for you.
Okay, great. Now we have another question around backlinks from authority websites. So our viewer says he's in the B2B software space. What's the best method for getting those backlinks from authority websites?
So is this do you build relationships with key influencers or just create great content? Well, it's kind of a mixture of both. As we kind of mentioned in the presentation, it is 80% outreach and 20% content. But for it to be successful, it needs to be a balance of both. So it does need to be great content, which is it's compelling, but something that these kind of influencers and journalists would be interested in. But equally, it's getting it in front of them and making them pay attention. One of the best ways to do this is to actually start building those relationships. So start to get involved with them, with that community, find out where they kind of hang out and talk to their peers. If you kind of establish yourself as one of their peers, they're going to be a lot more receptive to what you have to say and what you have to offer them. But equally, sometimes this isn't possible. That's best case scenario. And in those cases, it is very much a case of kind of cold emailing them. But as we mentioned in the presentation, making sure that you have enough data on them to make sure that your email comes across as very well considered, personalized, and highly relevant to what they do. Because the reality is the majority of the emails these guys get, they're just going to be really generic emails that are kind of tangent-densely related to what they write about. If you write something that's really, really targeted towards what they're writing about that's helpful to them, then you're going to get a lot further.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. In the past, I worked for a small boutique PR agency, and definitely one of the best ways, you have to think about whether you're looking for media outlets or influencers, because there's definitely different ways to do that. But one of the best ways, definitely when you're initially pitching them, is certainly what you said around making sure there's data in there. But one of the biggest errors I always see marketers do is saying, I have the greatest thing out here and you're never going to believe how it's going to revolutionize your audience. And that's the last thing a journalist or an influencer wants. What they want is to know what their audience can get. So the biggest thing to do, and the first one sounds like an advertisement versus saying, I looked into your blog. I really love what you guys do. I have some interesting stats that I think your users would find fascinating. So you put that influencer as a priority and show how you help them, reach and connect with their audience. And that's how you connect with them. And it's about, as you mentioned, building those long-term relationships so that every time, a new software update comes out or, you come up with a new data study, that you have those people that you can go to that have you have the rapport with them and you can easily get your message out there. And if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to ping that back in the chat box. But let's go on to another, and this goes more to blog posts. So it sounds like our viewer was told to go back and refresh old blog posts that were extremely popular to make sure that the date was refreshed without losing the domain authority. Do you guys agree with that? And they want to know if they should just post newer content that's similar to some of their best performing content, or if they should be refreshing old content to keep the domain authority but have the newer publication date.
It definitely can help to go back and refresh old content, especially if it's thin. So if there aren't really enough words on the page, there's not a huge amount of benefit in to keep doing it. But I would kind of concentrate on publishing new content. And if there is any blog posts that are thin or aren't ranking that well, you can go back and redo them. But I would put most of the effort into creating new pieces which are kind of targeting newer terms.
Great. So, we're talking about this big topic of SEO, and how do you really measure SEO? Like, how do you measure the success of your efforts in driving website traffic? And what are some of the key, metrics and numbers that you look at to see if what you're doing is successful?
Well, I guess ultimately, depending on the business, but say you have like a client-driven big data solutions company. Ultimately, it's just about the amount of new clients, new leads, and business you're getting coming in, right? So, it can be confusing to look at stuff like organic traffic and rankings, but it's much more important to look at how targeted that traffic coming to your site is, and how targeted the keyword you are ranking comes in. So keyword rankings is absolutely one of them, but the more important aspect of that is identifying the keywords that bring in the most relevant people who are most likely to convert. As well as this, looking at organic traffic coming through those kind of channels and coming through those relevant keywords, but more importantly, kind of looking at how that organic traffic does convert when it hits your site. So I would say probably the most important way of measuring SEO would be looking, having analytics set up on your website correctly so you can see exactly how the leads that SEO is generating are converting. Except for that, you can also look at third-party metrics like domain authority and the trust flow and that sort of thing. But it's important to remember that those are third-party metrics. You're trying to rank yourself in Google, not in one of these pieces of software. So don't take those as gospel. But yeah, just the triumvirate of kind of the amount of links you've got coming in that have been indexed, the keywords that you have ranking that are relevant, and the organic traffic that's coming to your site through SEO that's converting well.
Great. So I think we're just going to answer a couple more questions and be courteous of people's time. So going on to another one is, how often do you put out studies, in this raw data? So we talked about, one of the best ways to create yourself as authority is to, certainly externalize your findings and insights. So how often do you do this, and how often do you push out press releases for your own company?
I guess that all kind of boils down to how often you're putting out things that people will care about. When you first start kind of doing these kind of content marketing campaigns and the content-based link building campaigns, it's going to be quite a steep learning curve. You're going to make mistakes, and it's important to learn from these kind of mistakes. But the most important thing is that each and everything that you do does have value. So don't just do it for the sake of it. Make sure that you put a lot of effort into one focused thing, as opposed to kind of scattergunning a bunch of kind of more half-baked ideas and that sort of thing. So do as much as the resources and your ideas allow, and if people aren't receptive to it, or things aren't successful in gaining a lot of links, kind of take a step back, look at what you did that could be improved, and then use that again.
Now, I think the kind of key here is not to think about quantity, but rather quality. So instead of approaching the problem saying, this month I'm going to make 4 pieces of content. Instead, you say, right, I'm going to make one really amazing, detailed piece of content. And then once you've got a good kind of routine in place, then you can increase that to 2 pieces of content a month. But I think if you're really going to make an impact with these kind of content marketing campaigns, you really need to make a real good impression with the kind of the journalists and your readers. So you really need to focus on creating a really amazing piece of content.
I couldn't agree more with that. As a content marketer myself, it's definitely one of those things where everyone's always, it's a quality versus quantity game, and quality is always trumps quantity. But that doesn't mean you can't do quality at scale. So I think we're going to end on this last question, and it's a little bit detailed, so certainly if you guys decide want to answer it offline, that's fine. But quick question about on-page SEO, looking to implement a silo structure. Do you have any tips on sitemaps? And again, we can follow up more specifically later. But do you have any quick tips around silo structures?
Yeah, well, silo structures, very important kind of way to structure a site. It kind of builds topical relevance for Google, which is very important, especially if your site kind of covers a couple of different niches. When implementing silo structure, I would say the most important thing before you even start touching any code or anything on your servers is look at the products and the categories on your page and decide what should be grouped with what's most relevant from a search engine's perspective to be grouped together. And then decide whether you're going to go with physical siloing, where you kind of silo things through subdirectory structure on a server, or whether you go with virtual siloing, which is more to do with kind of internal linking structures and passing topical relevance through those internal links. So kind of, just get a pen and a notepad, plan it all out before you start making big changes like that. Those would be my tips for silo structure. Another important tip with silo structure, if you're going with kind of physical silos where you have subdirectories within subdirectories within subdirectories, it's worth remembering that the URLs themselves and the URL paths still need to be fairly search friendly, and so while it's not a problem to kind of have pages within a couple of different subdirectories, you don't want to go too overboard with it. So keep in mind that you do want kind of short, understandable URLs as well.
Wonderful. Well, thank you guys so much for sharing this great information today. I know we have a lot of questions and probably a lot of follow-ups. So thank you guys so much for joining us today. Links to Thuso Digital are in the attachments, as well as Bright Talk if you'd love to learn about how we can help you with demand gen through webinars and videos and an online platform of over 4 million professionals. We'd love to connect with you offline, and certainly leave a rating and check out some of the attachments. And we hope to see you back again on the Bright Talk Academy. Thank you guys for joining.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.